Alright, let's start a new drawing. When starting a new drawing, the first step is choosing what units you'd like to work with, such as inches or centimeters. To select this, type in units and then press Enter. It also changes the appearance of the distance units. For example, if you have decimals selected, you would see something like 18.750. If you have architectural selected, you might see something like 1 foot 6 3/4 inches. Both of these numbers represent the same distance, but can be displayed in different ways. For the example drawings, you'll be working mostly with architectural units. Next, we'll set up your layers. Layers are groupings of objects such as lines or 3D solids that you choose to share the same properties such as color, line type, and visibility. To set up your layers, type LA into the command line. This will bring up one of the different tool palettes. You can dock your tool palettes so that they remain visible or disappear when you're not using them. I recommend keeping the layer palette handy. Within the layer palette, you'll see several different buttons at the top, including New Layer, Delete, and Set Current. If you want to change any of the layer properties, simply click on any of the icons in the menu box to change that particular layer property. If you want to change the layer's color, click on the colored square of the layer you want to change. You can name your different layers accordingly. Some of the different functions that you'll be using will be things like freeze and thaw. Freezing a layer temporarily hides all the lines and objects included in that layer until you click the sun or snowflake again to unhide that layer. If you have many layers, you may want to use the filter function to group them together. Right now, create a new layer called Object. Make its color green. AutoCAD allows you to change the grid systems to fit your personal preferences. To change the grid, right-click on the grid symbol on the bottom function bar. Choose Settings. You can change the grid spacing in this window. If you're using the metric system, you'd probably want to use the grid spacing every 5 or 10 units. If you're using the English system, you'd probably want to use a spacing of every 8 to 16 units. Under the grid spacing portions, since we are using the English system, we're going to change the grid spacings to 1/8 of an inch and have a major or darker line every 8 spaces. The grid can also be turned on and off quickly by using the F7 key. You may also notice the snap function, or F9 on the keyboard. This function forces the cursor to snap to the grid settings. This means you'll only be able to go to the grid intersections, or the way it's shown here, halfway between the grid intersections. Under the snap function, remember to change the fraction to whatever you want it to snap to. I find that it's always helpful to have your grid and your snap set up to either the same scale, or have your snap set to 1/2 of the grid scale. Next, let's talk about object snaps, or O-snaps for short. O-snaps are helpers for your drawing. AutoCAD will use the O-snaps to try to help you along by guessing what you're trying to select. For instance, it might guess that you're trying to select an endpoint of a line, or a midpoint, or the center of a circle, or draw a line that is perpendicular or parallel to a different one. Each O-snap has its own symbol. You can change these settings by selecting the ones that you'd like to be active or inactive by right-clicking on the Object Snap button in the function toolbar at the bottom. You can turn the O-snap function on or off by pressing F3. I recommend leaving on endpoint, midpoint, center, and perpendicular. Also, Object Snap tracking can be useful. That's the F11 key. O-snap tracking can help you by providing guides for the different O-snaps. It's not necessary, but I have found it useful.